Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, and for the past several years, commentators have noticed a distinct bias coming out of the EPA in favor of electrical vehicles. Over the past year, the biofuels industry has been aggressive in urging the EPA to consider the environmental impacts of utilizing biofuels, ethanol, and renewable diesel, and last week the EPA disregarded that advice. Joining us now to talk through this issue is Jeff Cooper, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association. Jeff, this was a stunning decision from the EPA. Did it catch you off guard?
Well, we were a little surprised by this decision, Mike. We had been advocating, as you mentioned, for more than the past year to really make sure that EPA is including biofuels and ethanol specifically when it looks at policies to reduce emissions from light-duty vehicles. But they put this regulation out last week, and it really misses the mark. It effectively assumes the only way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles is to electrify them, even though we have been showing the agency for the past several years that biofuels like ethanol can do a very effective job at reducing those emissions. Unfortunately, they disregarded that information and put all their eggs in the electrification basket. We think that's a very disappointing and misguided decision. And we hope that EPA comes to its senses before implementing this in 2027.
Jeff, when the ethanol industry was talking with the EPA about the environmental impacts of ethanol, what were the advantages? What are the arguments that the industry can bring?
Well, first of all, ethanol is a solution that's here today. It's available today, broadly available. And ethanol, today's average corn ethanol reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 50% compared to gasoline. We're on a pathway to even greater reductions. If we add carbon capture and sequestration and other technologies to our facilities, we could be producing a carbon neutral liquid fuel, a zero carbon liquid fuel. But those investments are not going to be made if the industry isn't confident that we're going to have a market to sell into. So those are the sorts of, that's really what's at stake with this regulation. It was a chance, an opportunity for EPA to really open the toolbox and allow all the tools to be used to reduce emissions, and they didn't do that. They just focused on one tool, electric vehicles, which we think is misguided and leaves significant emissions reduction potential on the table.
So what is next for the industry, Jeff? Can we fight this regulation? Is it lawsuits? What's the take for ethanol proponents?
Well, we are fairly confident that EPA is going to get sued over this regulation. There's already a number of parties and interests that have sort of telegraphed their intent to sue EPA on these regulations. There's a lot of people that think they are unlawful, and EPA has overstepped its authority with these regulations. So we're going to pay close attention to how that plays out. We ourselves are considering our own options for fighting this regulation before it is implemented. This is a big deal for the ethanol industry and for corn growers. We're talking, EPA says this could lead to 17 billion gallons of lost ethanol demand over the next 6 years. That's 500 or 600 million bushels of corn. That's why this is such a big deal and we're taking it so seriously.
Something to keep watching going forward. That's Jeff Cooper of the Renewable Fuels Association. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. This past week was a busy one in the commodity markets, of course, with the collapse of the bridge over the Baltimore Harbor, the discovery of highly pathogenic avian influenza in dairy herds in Texas and in Kansas, and the release of USDA's prospective plantings data and quarterly grain stocks. We'll have those numbers at the end, but through all of this uncertainty, farmers are continuing to invest in farmland. Joining us for a discussion of how that market has been moving, Ray Brownfield, the owner and managing broker of LandPro LLC, joins us now. And Ray, this real estate market is still hot, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing in the last 2.5 years. And I've been in this business older than dirt almost, I guess you could say. I've never seen anything like it. It's a high demand factor. There's been lots of cash to go into land. And like we said, they're not making any more of it. So people want it. They want it if they can get it.
They do. Ray, when you think about just how much values have changed over the past couple of years, can you give us some details percentage-wise? What have you seen in Illinois for price change? We
have a survey that we're all a part of that was suggested from the end of 19 up till actually the end of 23, 55% increase with another, I think it was another 4% or more in 23, with it kind of moderating now. You'd expect it to, actually, but demand has been tremendous. Demand has been tremendous. And you mentioned it's moderating now. This is seasonal. In your mind, right here, this heading into planting season, moderation in price sales? Well, and there's uncertainty always at this time of the year as to grain prices aren't what they were last year at this time. That's a concern. Interest rates are a little bit higher. There's a lot of things happening in Brazil with export markets, that really has some uncertainty. So people are a little more cautious, but they're still out there looking for land. They are indeed. Ray, for folks looking to list land, we've seen the auction market really explode over the past couple of years as those prices were moving. Looking out into 2024, is auction still the way to go, or should private treaty be looked at? I would segment that into this answer. If it's high quality, well drained in a really area which there hasn't been a lot of activity, auction's the way to go. It's a demand factor. Demand creates value. If it's a farm where there's been a lot of saturation of the market, there's been a lot of buyers already and sellers, markets such that the drainage may be a problem on the farm, soil quality, then I might think private treaty in that instance. You mentioned area saturation. If you've seen a lot of sales in a region, can you expand on that a little bit, Ray? What do you mean? We have seen in certain counties in Illinois, it just happened to be, I don't know why, more land went on the market in the last 2 years. Well, that absorbs just so many buyers in the area itself, and that was great, and demand was there. Now we're starting to see some of those areas where there just isn't quite the demand. Still people there, whereas other areas we see in the state of Illinois where there hasn't been much sale activity, and we still see those high prices. It's all about who's got the dry powder, I suppose, when those auctions, when that hammer comes down. Good point. Absolutely. Ray, who's buying this land? Is it still predominantly farmers, or are investors coming back in? It's predominantly still been farmers that are really looking to long-term for their families, good estate planning. They much prefer to have land and rent it, because rental, you never know where that's going to go. It could sell next year and they're gone. So really, most of the farmers, about 80% is what we've seen, and probably about 20% or less have been investors, both institutional with pension money, but also private investors who say, hey, I want land. I really understand what it can do for me. Lots to think about here in the land market. We'll have more with Ray when we come back. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with AD2 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And we're back talking farmland markets with Ray Brownfield, the owner and designated managing broker at LandPro LLC. Ray, just before break, you mentioned that there are different classes of investors and they're approaching this farmland market differently. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? What are the different breakdowns you see for investor buyers of farm ground? Well, you have people local that are not necessarily a farmer, but they're in the community. Could be doctors, lawyers, whomever, good business people that say, hey, I've liked land, it's been in our community, I want a piece of that. That's one segment. You have a group of people out there who are maybe representing pension funds or big investment funds. You know, there's over $1 trillion every year to be reinvested. Some of it goes to land. Some of these people are involved with that, and there's some major funds out there that see land as a good long-term investment. Now, they're very careful. They're not an issue where they're going to drive the market up because they're looking for bargains, because that gives them the return they need, okay? So that's one thing people understand. They're not out there pushing the market. They're hoping the market will go down in some cases so they get a good deal. Then you have individual investors who are relatively wealthy. They want to add to their total portfolio of land and also other investments, and they can be very aggressive because they have the cash. They have a willingness to own really good stuff, and they'll be there. If they decide to buy it, they're going to buy it. For that A1 level stuff, that's where you'll find those investor buyers. Yep. Ray, we've talked a lot about crop ground. Grain growing ground has exploded in prices. You mentioned 55% in Illinois over the past 5 years. Pasture ground has not been as loved. Cattle market's been tough, but that's turned in the last year. Is it pulling more people into that segment? It is, and in fact, I think I saw some statistics the other day. Some of that's up to $5,000 an acre. You're going, holy criminy. But cow-calf operation is doing good. We got a shortage of beef out there today due to drought in the western states. So yeah, it's starting to catch on again, and that's great because I'm a cattleman by background, if you will.
Absolutely. It's tough to get it out of your blood once it's in there.
It is.
Ray, right in line with that pasture ground category is recreational ground, hunting, go-karting, all that sort of stuff. That was moving higher a lot. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I was surprised. Our statistics show this last year, I think it was up 5 to 7%. I'm going, wow, that shows more people want to be out again. And I think that started with COVID, with the 19. People said, hey, let's get out of the city. Let's get to where we can have our own land, enjoy the peace and quiet and that sort of thing. So we're seeing that. Hunting, fishing still always been a big thing. That tells me there's a little more expendable income, though, to come into that marketplace as well.
That's true. They've got to have cash in order to do that.
Yep.
And of course, we need cash in order to do all of this. Rising interest rates could impact some of that cash. Ray, do you have concerns over this next 12 months that interest rates could cool off the farmland market?
No.
Why not?
I really don't. I don't think in the 6 to 7% bracket doesn't really, yeah, we don't like it, but it doesn't bother us so much. When you think in years past we had double digit, look at the past. And look at what we got today. It's still not bad.
Still, so you still would say farmland is worthy of a good look for an investment perspective?
Absolutely.
All right, and you're going to be looking at that A1 ground or whatever's coming up in the market,
Whatever
I suppose.
makes sense. Yep.
Ray, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this week. Always a pleasure to learn about the changes that are happening in farmland real estate. And on Thursday, the USDA released the prospective plantings report for this growing season, as well as the quarterly grain stocks, and we've got those numbers for you here. For 2024, statisticians at the USDA estimate American farmers will plant 90 million acres of corn. That's down more than 4.5 million acres from 2023 and a smaller number than analysts were anticipating, with the average trade guess at 92 million acres. Soybeans are expected to pick up most of that lost corn acreage, with planting expected to be near 86.5 million acres, a nearly 3 million acre increase from 2024. Iowa and Illinois are expected to plant the most at more than 10 million acres each, though big increases are forecast in North Dakota, Oklahoma, and Louisiana as well. All wheat acres are forecast lower for this year, with 47.5 million acres expected to go in the ground. That's down 2.1 million acres from last year and back in the range of wheat acres from 2018 through 2022. With some cotton farmers finding better soil moisture conditions this year, acreage for that crop is expected to grow by 300,000 acres, a 38% increase in Pima cotton seedings and a 4% climb for upland cotton acres. Thursday also saw the release of the quarterly grain stocks report, which showed larger supplies of corn, beans, and wheat on hand than 1 year ago. Corn stockpiles were reported at 8.34 billion bushels, slightly smaller than expectations. Soy stocks were largely in line with analyst guesses at 1.85 billion bushels, but wheat surprised the market, with stocks reported at 1.09 billion bushels, above the range of market expectations.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Greg Solier has been watching the charts and maps. He joins us now. And Greg, it's been active out in the Pacific Northwest. And is that expected to continue?
Kind of a winding down process is underway for your typical winter precipitation pattern. Some of the systems a little bit few and far between, not quite exactly like you'd expect for the snow season in the Cascades. And certainly that translates east through Big Sky Country of the Dakotas, Southern Canadian Prairie, the upper Midwest. A lot of times we've had those downslope winds. We've had some snow systems that get melted away, temperatures all over creation. Matter of fact here, pretty interesting, we're out of winter time. We're in the start of astronomical spring. And from parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota, we've seen 2 and even 3 times the usual amount of snow for the winter season. This past winter season, testimony to how little we've seen. In any event, the last, we think, big get-together with winter weather systems out the Bitterroots, heading towards the Black Hills, some wind and snow, nothing out of control with the last of calving and lambing operations, but there's a fair amount of cold through the Canadian Prairie. Pretty quiet weather picture, Northern California into the Pacific Northwest. By the time we get into the middle and late parts of the week, nice ridge of high pressure opportunities for a little early season field work across the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin. and some wind, some downslope conditions, but milder air, and there'll be some snow melt and some softer grounds across areas of the Dakotas and southern Canadian Prairie, but a very quiet weather picture over the middle and late portions of the week. We think probably the last of these El Nino-driven weather systems coming across California into the southwestern states will probably spark some severe weather across areas of Kansas southward in through Texas. A fair amount of that Texas winter wheat crop, about 36% I believe, is jointing currently, less than 10% up through Kansas. And we'll take the moisture through Nebraska. Little rain snow mix, some wind through the desert southwest, maybe a thunderstorm and severe, but tell you, we're going to have to keep an eye on this wind situation across West Texas, quiet weather across the valleys of California. That trend continues on over the late portions of the week. Here is that ridge of high pressure across the western states, mild dry time across the central and southern plains down into the Lone Star State as well.
The central part of the U.S. was walloped last week. Greg, as you mentioned, do they get a break this next week?
One more coming on through. Matter of fact, we'll have that long-range weather outlook coming up in the second half hour. We do begin to see the pattern shift. If you're getting a little worked up, especially where it's been a little bit too wet in some areas of the eastern Corn Belt, right on target to get some recharge and drought improvement here, even with the snow, mind you. Well, here's the next weather system with cold air laying out a snow-rain mix into the northern and western Corn Belt, back into the Great Plains, showers and thunderstorms eastbound across the eastern and southern Corn Belt. That very cold air through the Canadian Prairie stays there. Here's some ridging over the middle part of the country with some dry time, cool, dry, high pressure over across the Corn Belt. Temperatures recovering back west of the Missouri River. Onto the southern plains we go. Again, we got to keep an eye on this burned out, blown out cattle country here through West Texas and Oklahoma. Severe weather will march to the east across the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region into the Ozarks as well. Last week, some frost and freeze there. We'll keep an eye on that here in the coming days and weeks per usual. A couple of scattered showers with a cold front off to the east. Dry time for Kansas on southward through Texas. Warm, dry weather in the desert southwest. Kind of feeling like springtime in the southern plains.
Does it feel like spring as you look all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, Greg?
Not quite. You know, we've been back and forth all over creation. We had more mild days, I think, during the mid to late winter season than we have so far into early astronomical springtime. And here's the moisture pattern. Welcome through Wisconsin and Iowa, the upper Midwest. Yes, it is probably some snow, some rain and showers and thunderstorms central and southern Corn Belt, and a march to the east in the wake of last week's nor'easter. That was a primarily rain event, thank goodness. In any event, this low makes its way up across the St. Lawrence River Valley. Windy, colder weather, a couple of snowflakes and snow showers downwind of the Great Lakes region. Cool, dry, high pressure for the Great Lakes region, and a fair amount of sunshine over the western and southern Corn Belt locales with opportunities for maybe a little walk in the back 40. Showers and thunderstorms into the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region. That activity will march to the east, maybe heavy and severe across the Carolinas down through Florida. Opportunities for some field work across the Delta on westward later in the week.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Agriculture is an industry, as we all know, of tight margins. In 2024, those margins look tighter than usual. It's important to not have any waste or spoilage on the farm. To that end, managing and tracking the grain inside those bins is helpful. I had the chance to talk with John Oden, a Kansas farmer who's installed Bin Manager by AGI, and I asked him, how's it working?
We've just been using that for the last year. Just started using it, and we love it. It works great. It's a great peace of mind. I don't have to go check the bins every couple of days or every week after things are settled in, and we just look at my phone real quick on the app, and I can get it to switch and monitor it, or get it to auto hydrate, or whatever I want it to do.
What was the installation process like? Was this an existing grain setup, or was this all new?
It was an existing grain setup for the most part.
So and it went in
we did have one
easily?
new grain bin, but yeah, it went in real easy. They were just out there for a day and installed it, no problem.
Fantastic. And throughout harvest, you were able to, like you say, set it and forget it,
yep,
sounds like.
Basically, yep.
Just let it keep running.
Yep, we could watch it and let her go.
What was the appeal of adding this type of grain monitoring technology to your farm? What do you hope to gain out of it? What's the long-term advantage for you?
Long-term advantage is hopefully better quality grain. Peace of mind is a big one, because we've had some spoilage here and there over the years, and not having any spoilage, and then also rehydrating grains and keeping them at the right moisture has been awesome.
Have you had a chance to use the bin manager yet to catch an impending emergency? Have you had some spoilage that was developing and you caught it and were able to fix it?
Well,
or hopefully you just prevent it?
We prevented, I think, because we've had monitors, and it's monitored, it's taking care of it. If it feels a little hot spot, it kicks on fans and cools it right off. So it's been easy.
That's fantastic. For any advice for growers who are thinking about maybe their bin site needs a technological upgrade, would you recommend the bin manager from AGI?
Oh yeah, I definitely would. It's real easy, and then when you call in asking questions, they've been really good to help, answering your questions, and
Fantastic.
it's been perfect.
Thanks, John, for that update on the bin manager system by AGI. John and I had the chance to catch up there at Commodity Classic, and while I was there, I also made it over to the John Deere booth and caught up with Emily Priebe. She's the marketing manager for John Deere, and she was on hand outlining some of the new updates to the equipment in their lineup, and I asked her what has she heard from farmers now that they're getting a chance to poke their heads inside some of this new machinery.
They're very excited about the 9RX 830, which we have here today, also the 710 and the 770. The whole suite of high horsepower 9RX tractors have created a lot of buzz just because of the productivity advances. They're going to give customers the ability to go faster, the ability to go wider, and the ability in small grains to really have the most productivity possible when pulling in hills and with commodity carts. It's going to be a big deal.
What are some of the headline features that are really grabbing people's attention, Emily, on the new 830?
Yeah, so when you look at the 830 specifically, you can disc about 100 more acres per day, and we can eliminate about 1,000 ripper passes in the field when you're looking from a corn and soy perspective. When you're looking at small grains, the hydraulic capacity of this tractor is up to 168 gallons per minute, which is significant and gives us the ability when we're pulling through hills to go 1 mile an hour faster with 2 times the cart load. So it's a significant game changer for all those growers.
It is indeed, and that's not the only new product on the floor here at Commodity Classic. Emily, what else are you guys talking about this year at John Deere?
Yeah, so a great marriage for that 9RX 830 is our new series of air cart that goes behind it. So we've introduced a whole new series of air carts, and we have a whole leading and trailing series of cart. Today in the booth, we're showcasing the 850 cart, and really what we're excited about with it is the capability to have all the technology that customers want in an air cart. Things like easy calibration, where we can reduce the amount of time it takes to calibrate the air cart up to 75% over our previous model and 45% over our competitors. We also have accurate stainless steel metering, so giving us high-grade stainless steel across that cart is really a game changer for air seeding producers that are using seed as well as fertilizer running through that cart each year. So it's a big deal, and it's going to be a great match for customers.
It is, and of course that's planting season. You'll find that. Then summer gets here. It's going to be time to spray. Emily, does John Deere have some new solutions for sprayers?
We absolutely do. So in the sprayer space, we're excited to announce the John Deere STS-16 Hagee sprayer will now have See & Spray premium technology. So we're taking our See & Spray technology that today is on John Deere sprayers from either a factory installed perspective or an upgrade perspective and moving it to the Hagee lineup with the STS-16. So now See & Spray will be factory installed, giving customers up to 50% in chemical savings.
So we've got the crop in the ground, we've got our crop protection chemicals on it, then we've got a harvest. What does John Deere have from a combine perspective, Emily?
Well, it's a good thing you came today because we have all of that covered. We also introduced the S7 combine. So the S7 combines are a new series of combine that take the styling of the X9 that people like so much, as well as the residue management system and the cab from that combine, and put it in an S7 size package. We've also introduced combine automation features. So harvest settings automation as well as predictive ground speed automation, and when you couple those together in our combines can give customers up to a 20% increase in productivity by letting the combine really set itself, which is a big deal for customers. They're very excited about it.
And the combine can set itself. Folks, the level of automation we have in farm equipment in 2024 is fascinating. No doubt it would make farmers 100 years ago probably pretty jealous. Our thanks to Emily Priebe from John Deere for that update. And folks, leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back, so don't go away.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH. Built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Logistics and supply chains were in the news once again last week following the collapse in Baltimore of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It has closed off the harbor as of now, and its impacts could be long-lasting, though how severe will they be in agriculture? Joining us now is Mike Steenhoek. He serves as the executive director for the Soy Transportation Coalition. And Mike, this bridge collapse, is it much of an export destination, Baltimore, for ag commodities?
Yeah, the Port of Baltimore is not one of the preeminent launching points for agricultural products, including soybeans, for global markets. So in 2023, a little bit of more than 300,000 metric tons of soybeans were exported from the Port of Baltimore, primarily in containers, not in bulk shipments. That compares to what we move out of the lower Mississippi River near New Orleans, where we easily will move 20 million metric tons. A couple years ago, it was up to 35 million metric tons, which is our number one export region. So it does pale in comparison to some of these other areas like the lower Mississippi River, like the Pacific Northwest, but it does have certainly relevance to the broader economy and a number of other products like automobiles, light trucks, farm machinery. They utilize the Port of Baltimore considerably. And it's all part of this bigger issue of we as a country, we as an economy need to have diversity of our supply chain. And anytime you have one of these ports have a major disruption, and obviously this is a tragic one at the Port of Baltimore, it really can have a negative ripple effect through the broader economy. So it obviously is much reason for concern.
Absolutely it is. And so that's the concern here domestically. We'll watch and see how this issue plays out over the coming weeks. Looking to South America, Mike, I also saw news that Brazil might be looking to use a Chinese-controlled port in the country of Peru to ship seeds or soybeans over to China. Is this something you're keeping an eye on? How much is this going to impact global soy shipments?
Yeah, we've seen a notable increase in investment from China to Brazil for the infrastructure to accommodate agricultural products and provide a more effective linkage between Brazil and China. And a lot of that has occurred within the country of Brazil, but what's notable about this is that this is a port that's in Peru and will more effectively provide a rail linkage from the interior part of Brazil to the west coast of South America, where Peru is located. So now all of a sudden you've got we'll have a viable route for Brazilian commodities to go to the west coast of South America and then just cross the Pacific Ocean. And the concern for us in our global competitiveness is once you make investments in infrastructure, you make those investments to provide benefit, not just today, not just tomorrow, but for years and years to come. So this is something that we're really going to be, wrestling with for the foreseeable future. It should all the more inspire us to invest in our infrastructure and making sure it's as well maintained as possible.
Absolutely. We can't be losing ground in this global competition. Mike Steenhoek, Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg mentioned next week's going to be active weather-wise. Greg, who's going to see the precipitation?
Well, it'll be over much of the country with additional drought relief. Again, for some folks who may not necessarily like it, but it's been that wet packing, high moisture content snow, and you melt it down. We've had some pretty good moisture totals last week, and the same will apply here despite maybe some half a foot or more snowfalls in the areas of the western Corn Belt, upper Midwest, an inch or two into the central and southern Corn Belt. Don't panic. This is not the spring planting outlook, only next week. And severe weather down across areas of the deep south. So moisture in through California, Pacific Northwest as well. So basically everyone gets something here, and especially where we need it. And it's still the ongoing worst of the dryness and drought, upper Midwest, western Corn Belt, Great Plains.
What's your outlook for temperatures as you get into that second week of April, Greg?
Still a little nip in the air. We've got a lobe of cooler to colder air. These temperatures have been sort of up and down and all over creation, so we get at least a flattened west to east jet stream orientation, so the cold air is in a big dump on southward, but below average out through the Pacific Northwest, northern and central plains, Corn Belt locales into areas of the St. Lawrence River Valley, sometimes at the southern fringe of these cold air outbreaks. Got to keep an eye on frost potential, late season potential there. Above average readings across much of Dixie, Texas, and through the southwestern states, and it's still kind of a busy weather pattern. Back to dry time, though, southern Canadian Prairie, northern plains, we won't have the usual spring floods the way we see it into the Red River Valley of the North. Moisture for parts of California, central and southern plains, across the Ohio Valley, much of the eastern and southern Corn Belt. Normal precip down across the southeastern sections of the country, too.
How about the week of April 15th, Greg? Do those temperatures start to moderate?
Beginning to see the pattern shift here. We've talked about it for weeks now. Here's the last lobe, last trough. You can see how the cold air is easing up, making its move back across the Canadian Prairie. So a little bit below average here through the upper Midwest. Readings otherwise pretty much normal for the desert Southwest, much of the plains, Ohio Valley. Some warmth on the northern end of the subtropical ridge over the southeastern part of the country, and some warmth too over the western part of the country. And opportunities for some field work, whether it's the summer grains, some planting operations into parts of the northern and western Corn Belt locales, any wet weather over eastern and southern areas. But this is about normal, so probably equates to about a half to 3/4 of an inch of rain that week. Heavier moisture for the eastern states, along with severe weather into the Tennessee Valley. So signs of a pattern shift, Mike, as we move on through the mid-stretch of the month of April.
All right, Greg. Well, what do you see as April comes to a close?
Here we go. We got a nice pattern shift for you here between the 22nd and 28th, so at or maybe just a few days behind ramping up of corn and soybean planting as it applies to the Midwest. Last of the cool to cold air off to the east. Look at the ridge, summertime version across the western half of the country, and this is what you want with outdoor work and field work in mind for the Midwest, the Plain States areas, Great Lakes region, wet down through Florida, Texas, and parts of the Pacific Northwest.
The Farm Progress Roundup is brought to you by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. Working at Farm Progress has some desk job attributes. We have to write, we have to talk on TV, but at the end of the day, we like being out with farmers and with the industry. Editor of Missouri Ruralist Mindy Ward spent last week doing just that, hanging out with farmers at the Cover Crop Field Day at the University of Missouri. Mindy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Let's talk about that field day. What were the topics up for conversation about cover crops in Missouri in 2024? Mindy?
Yeah, actually, it was at the Bay Farm Research Facility. A lot of state organizations, I don't know, in other states may have research facilities, but the Missouri Soybeans does. And they work collaboratively with whether it's private companies or whether the University of Missouri to bring research to soybean growers that are going to help them, whether that's new hybrid varieties, whether that's soil and crop nutrition, or whether it's that crop management practice known as cover crops. And so they talked a lot about the different things that are going on in cover crops, whether it's the new tech that is there or whether it's that carbon market.
On the new tech side, Mindy, what has come out? What is the technology that's hot in that space right now?
Well, it was really interesting because this last year, the University of Missouri worked with them and they did a project on cover crop seeding. And so they looked at 3 different aspects, whether that was the drone or whether that was a drill seed or whether it was a new one from Montag, and it's called the Harvest Seeder. And so it goes behind the soybean header as you're going through harvest and actually drops the cover crop seed straight into the soil behind it. So they were looking at how much cover do you get from that, whether it's the drill, whether it's the drone, or whether it's that new piece of tech that Montag has out there. So it was pretty interesting to see the differences. And so, you found with drones, there's a lot of work to be done, especially with calibration, especially when there's different sides of seed and also when there's wind. So you're looking at just different options that are out there for farmers, and they're trying to get that out there because it's a growing space, and with seed being more expensive, it's one of those things that you need to get the most on the ground.
It certainly is. Now, Mindy, you also mentioned carbon markets. That's an issue that has been top of mind for a lot of growers. What was the consensus?
Yeah, we had a lot of different, I would say, generations in the room as well, and those who are early adopters versus those who are new to it. And so we had a whole entire carbon panel who talked a little bit about what was available. As you know, that this administration has put a lot of money toward that climate smart, and this is one of those aspects is growing cover crops into that. And so you had the younger gens who are trying to get their foot in the door and using cover crops behind soybeans, tapping into some of those I would say company benefits that are out there that are being offered. And it's just kind of trying to figure out which one is the best. And so you did see a little bit of those older generation going, we've been with cover crops since it has been cool. So they wanted to, that historical to go a little longer out so they could get advantage of some of that money that is being thrown at the carbon industry.
Absolutely, there is a lot. And Mindy, of course, this full write-up will be coming in a future edition of the Missouri Ruralist. Thank you so much for giving us a little insight today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
Folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. In Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, it may be a tractor I've shown you before, but there's a strong connection this Easter weekend. In Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. In Will County, Illinois, Tony Kestel started farming many years ago with an old farmall, and today his son Dave still owns that 1954 Farmall Super M. Oh, it looks so good because Dave had it restored a few years ago. He drives it out there, limbers it up every now and then on his corn and soybean farm. There's something else, though, he does with a more modern tractor and a tillage tool. And he has done this a few years now, just before Easter. Dave Kestel goes out into that field and he carves a cross in that field in northern Illinois. This was one of the first ones he did, 3 or 4 years ago. Just a few days ago, he went back into the field once more, stepped off the area where he needed to turn. He doesn't use GPS, as far as I know. He steps it off and he puts that cross in the field in observance of Easter, to help remember, I think, his father Tony, and to remind anybody flying over at 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 20,000 feet, as they look down over northern Illinois, why we have Easter. Well, Mark Stock joins us every week, looking ahead on what's crossing the block at Big Iron. Here's Mark's weekly report.
Well, hello, everybody. We sure want to wish everybody a very happy and blessed Easter. We do have some nice machinery selling next week, folks. April the 2nd, Kibble Equipment LLC will be selling some 2020, 21, and 22-year model machines. John Deere 8R, 410 mechanical front tractor, several late model John Deere S 790 and 780 combines. Torgerson Brothers are retiring from Radcliffe, Iowa, featuring a John Deere S770 four-wheel drive combine, 2021 John Deere 9570 RT track tractor. And there will be 3,160 plus items selling on April the 3rd, including Wright Implement, with locations across Kentucky. We'll sell a John Deere 612R sprayer, 4023R sprayer, John Deere 1790 planters. Mark Miller, LLC by Bloomfield, Nebraska will be selling Kenworth mixer feeder trucks. Becker Ag Sales is retiring from Bodie, Iowa. 398 items. Also in April, 2 very nice prestigious ranches will sell in Nebraska. 5,058 acres will sell in 3 tracks on April the 12th, and on April 25th, 6,242 acres of Brown County, Nebraska land will sell. If you're looking for ranch land, go to bigiron.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And now it's time to meet that next generation of leader in the world of agriculture. And joining us this week is Christian Pena. He's serving as the 2024 Kansas State FFA President. And Christian, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Let's talk about what got you started in FFA those years ago. Christian, what made you want to join?
One of the things that made me join was I had a great ag teacher who really saw something in me, and something that a lot of teachers really didn't, and that agriculture education really did have a lot of things that I was interested in. And with their investment in me, I was able to dive deep into what the organization is all about, leadership, career development skills, and as well as just being able to explore passions that, I didn't realize I had, or some that I had, and I was able to, gain some further skills from that opportunity.
It's a great way to learn new things and get fresh ideas. Christian, I'm glad to hear that enthusiasm moved you through high school. Then, of course, you had the chance to run for president. And what was it that made you want to be president of the Kansas FFA?
My big motivating factor was the fact that I could serve the organization that gave me so much. I look back on a time to where when I first started in the organization, I was the kid who sat in the back of the classroom. I didn't really want to talk to anybody, but also the fact that I grew up with a heart condition that didn't allow me to play any sports, so I wasn't able to be a part of a team. But as soon as I stepped foot in that classroom, a whole new world of opportunities opened for me, and I finally felt like I was a part of that team. So this is my way of being able to give back to the organization that gave a lot to me, but also be able to hopefully foster some new opportunities for students, either similar to my position, but also all the students in our organization.
That's fantastic, Christian. Of course, working with that team to put convention together, that'll come to a head later in May, and then you'll return to school for agribusiness. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have been very busy with convention prep that's coming up here at the end of May, so we're working on retiring addresses. We have all our convention components and themes worked out, and we are excited for what has to come to see the new officer team and celebrate some of our state members on the big stage.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, Christian. Thanks for talking with us this week.
Yes, thank you. You have a great day.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. It won't be long now and you'll be in the field. Chad Colby has a new way to get that fuel there safely.
So you'll see a lot of friendly faces at construction shows, and one of them is a really friendly equipment provider to agriculture. Stephen, talk a little bit about over the years how Thunder Creek has really become the mainstay in fuel delivery in ag.
So we've really grown over the last 10 years in the agricultural industry, and as many of you know, we provide safe DOT compliant fuel trailers, and it springs right around the corner, and you really want to get that crop in the ground fast. Much like you're using seed tenders to fill up those planters faster. Look to Thunder Creek, right? We can fill stuff up at 40 gallons a minute, putting diesel in those tractors and keeping them moving, and we can get you from point A to point B safely and faster as well.
Stephen, over the years, you guys have developed other products, and I've got to tell you, they kind of came from the agriculture space.
That's right. We've really grown over the last 5 or 6 years. We've dove off into the construction industry, and a lot of that is branched out from the need in the agricultural industry, right? We had farmers coming to us saying, hey, we want to haul this fuel and we want to do it on job sites and we want to do it in these other projects that we're working on, but we want to do it safely and without a hazmat where the requirements are a little bit differently. So yes, we've got fuel trailers. Now we're doing service and lube stuff. We're doing combination trailers where you can do PM and fuels, and of course our DEF systems that are well known in the agricultural industry. That's becoming more and more prevalent on the construction side as well. And then we're even doing truck upfits now to be more nimble in metro markets and getting off-road.
Talk a little bit about the truck upfit. That's pretty impressive. There's been a lot of people looking at it here at the show. That's a neat new product niche, I should say.
Yeah, there's, again, most of the things that we produce are coming from feedback from our customers. And there's just certain applications where folks can't or don't want to pull a trailer, right? It's, backing down a long lane, getting off-road where they need four-wheel drive capability and not all that weight. It's definitely the fastest growing product that we have right now. We're really excited about the truck upfits.
I love seeing the innovation from Thunder Creek. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. And folks, leave it here. When This Week in Agribusiness comes back, we'll take a deeper look at the machinery market. Farm machinery. Prices are still high, but supply is growing, or at least that's what it appears as I drive past dealers' lots. Joining us now to talk about the state of the industry is Kurt Blades. He's Senior Vice President with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. And Kurt, earlier this week, that bridge in Baltimore's collapse, is that going to have an impact on the ag equipment manufacturing industry?
Well, it's really too early to tell what the impact is going to be. Obviously, when there is a disruption of a major port that includes a lot of equipment and automobiles and components, We know there will be an impact, but it's too soon to tell what that actually is going to be. I guess first and foremost, our hearts go out to those that tragically lost their lives in that disaster, and we'll continue to monitor the situation and make sure that there's as little disruption to the ag equipment market as it possibly can be.
So let's talk about that market a little bit more broadly. It does seem like we have greater supply out there in the countryside. Kurt, is that backed up by what you've seen in the numbers?
Well, I'll tell you what we've seen for the last 3 years, actually kind of predating the pandemic, when we started to see some tightness of the supply and the increase of the demand. We're starting to catch up with basically with those inventories. And so you're starting to see those inventories, creep up just a little bit, but you're also seeing those numbers continue to be strong, specifically in the ag market, where we're seeing tractors and combines, specifically those that are used for row crops, continue to be pretty solid. We've kind of undulated, on the positives and negative side, but they've overall just been trending sort of in the right direction. We are seeing softness on the small tractor side. Those tractors that are under 40 horsepower, that market was white hot during the pandemic, and it's just starting to sort of cool off a little bit. I think basically the demand has been met.
That makes sense. Kurt, as you look out over the remainder of this year, do manufacturers plan to keep their foot on the gas in terms of production?
Well, I'll tell you what we've learned a lot over the years in ag equipment. When we have boom cycles like we've had for the last few years, they're typically what goes up sometimes come down. I think our manufacturers are doing a really good job of working with their dealerships, who are working closely with the farmers to ensure that the inventory levels end up at a rational level. So I don't think we're going to overproduce, but we're going to try to produce the right amount for the market at any given time.
That balancing act looks set to continue for 2024. Kurt Blades from AEM, thanks for talking with us this week.
You bet. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Be sure to catch us next week. We'll be right back here, same time, same place. We'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.